Issac Reshad, thank you very much for talking to Real Leaders today.
Pleasure.
You have a very interesting role. You travel around the world,
Yes.
especially in the Middle East, and you
Yes.
look at investment opportunities for your clients.
Correct.
And some of them have got some really fascinating social impact built into it. But I just wanted to start initially with you giving me a bit of background on what you do exactly.
So I represent family offices in the Middle East, and I connect with family offices here for co-investment opportunities, at the same time identifying deal flow that has some kind of social impact. These days it's very difficult to measure impact. So I roll my sleeves up and I go really deep into it to see how much impact there is in each deal.
Right. How do you measure that impact?
Not so easy. Right. I have two other experts that I bring on board and they help me out. They're specialists in the impact world. Everybody has their own way. Some say, well, the ROI's got to be under X%. Some say, well, we got to break even. They just want to break even. And there are families like that. Some want really high returns, but it's not social. So we bring in the experts, and it depends on the sector and industry.
Right. So tell me about the innovation that's happening with the investments. There's some really interesting projects you shared with me.
Correct. So there's one company that I'm a co-founder and partner in called Replibuild. So basically, you know the plastic problem.
Yes.
It's poisoning our marine life.
Yes.
And also humans as well.
They said there's going to be more plastic in the ocean than fish by
2050.
Yes.
Bingo. Yeah, weight-wise.
Right.
So what happens is the plastic is not biodegradable. They say it takes 500 years, but we really don't know. Nobody's been around 500 years. But it does break down into microplastics. And what happens is the fish ingest the microplastics, and we ingest the fish.
Right.
Also in our water, the microplastics, they don't go through the filter system. We get sick, right? So the plastic problem, it's bigger than we think it is. It's much bigger due to the research that I have done and spoken to scientists and universities. So we said, how do we resolve this? How do we create value as well? So we're planning to, it's a startup, a new venture, collect the plastic through NGOs and through governments from the oceans, transport it to a port here in the United States, break it down. We have a provisional patent, which is like a patent pending, a process that breaks it down, removes the contamination. Then we mix it with a little clay and we build it into blocks or bricks. Then we are going to have it tested by several third-party and government entities to make sure it's fire resistant and load resistant.
Is mixing clay and plastic a good idea? Is it even possible?
It is possible, as long as it's going to be majority plastic. And I can't give the exact amount because we're still testing it. We have different numbers. But the most important thing is fire resistant.
Right.
Load pressure. We're not going to build skyscrapers. So there's a company that I personally invested in, and I'm very involved in, and look at it. It creates social, economic, and environmental impact. So it's a win-win.
Right. How high can you actually go with a mixture of sand and plastic?
Percentages?
In terms of height of the structures you can build?
We want to stay with one story, even though people say you can do 2 and 3 stories. But we want to be safe. We want to keep it simple one stories. That's right. What the plan is. That's what our model suggests.
And how affordable is that process?
Okay, so there are other entities that have a similar product, which is more economical. I'm not going to say cheaper, more economical. But we're looking to disrupt the building industry. So we're looking at approximately 20 to 30% lower than building, but the quality, it's the same thing as it's durable like a regular block or brick.
Right.
Yeah.
So if you're disrupting the industry, if you're
planning to disrupt the industry,
planning to disrupt the industry, and you restrict it to one story at this point in terms of your building height, you're going to be disrupting it from single-story dwellings, I'm assuming initially, and looking at technology which might be able to scale it up to a much higher structure in the future.
Very good question. So, you're familiar with prefabricated homes?
Yes.
They started off with 1 story. Today I haven't seen more than 3 story, but I'm sure it's out there. People are building motels and I haven't seen hotels with motels out of them. So we want to start off there because you have to understand there's a lot of liability issues. We want to make sure, with the first 2 years, there's going to be a lot of testing done. We're not going to have the product out until we really test it out with, again, government entities and third-party testing and also European standards, because European has the best standards.
Right.
Then we're going to test out 1 story for about 2 years and see where it goes.
Right.
And then from there, we could possibly build 2 stories.
Is there a perception among consumers maybe that building a structure out of trash is not as desirable?
So it's actually, people have asked me, well, it's plastic. What about the fumes? What happens when the heat hits it? These are very good questions. I can't disclose too much information because we have a patent pending on it, but we have confirmed that it's not going to be an issue. Maybe, I don't know how it's going to be after 100 years, but for 20, 30 years, the tests that we have done, I mean, we haven't had that product for 10 to 20 years, but estimating it, there is not going to be any issues when the sun hits it and all the fumes and all that. But there's going to be continuous testing. That's the whole thing. Continuous testing to make the product better. But we're also, I left one thing out, not only for housing, we're also looking to do, there's companies out of Europe doing the roads, but we want to do those fancy driveways. You know how they have bricks in the fancy driveways? That's what we want to do as well. Pavers like that as well.
Right.
Yeah.
So your raw material is free. It's been discarded and thrown away. So the biggest cost, I'm guessing, is collecting it.
Okay, so yes, it is free if a government or a nonprofit or another entity donates it to you, because they want it out of there, because you know China's not taking any more plastic,
that's right.
and a lot of countries that the US was exporting plastics, they're not accepting. So we also want to work with landfills, just in case they can't deliver it or something goes on. We want to have product, and because the trash from the landfills will go into the ocean eventually. The trash from the landfills exudes fume, and it takes a lot of real estate.
So you're going to have to go and dig it up again.
As far as getting it from landfills?
Yes.
No, they will have it sorted out and everything, because there's different grades of
You're not
plastic.
looking at historical plastic, it's been buried for 10 years.
No.
Okay, it's
No.
probably degraded to a point where it's not useful.
I don't know if it's been degraded, because it takes many, it doesn't biodegrade.
Yeah, it's around for 200, 400 years, as
But
you
we
say.
don't know. We don't know. We haven't, to be quite honest, we never looked at that. We're just taking the one that they have there, because plastic comes in 7 grades. Remember that. And we're planning to convert all those 7 into this brick. There will not be any PVC, according to what the scientists say. Okay, so the landfill said, hey, we kind of have them sorted out, but we're going to resort them. Obviously, we have to resort them.
Right.
Yeah.
So business is coming up with really creative solutions to world problems right now. Pollution, plastic in the oceans being one of them. Are there any other exciting projects you're working on that might have some kind of social impact built into them?
Right now, I'm focusing anything from waste to resource. We're not doing waste to energy, because of the carbon footprints and all that, but there's something else we're working on, which I can't disclose too much, but it's going to be a consumer product out of plastic as well. And that's much easier than the bricks.
Right.
I'll tell you about it next time, because
Okay,
right now we're
next
doing
year.
the patents and everything, yeah.
Fantastic. So tell me about how business can become involved in this way of thinking, because most people think this is a recycling issue. How would a mainstream company be able to adopt the same kind of innovative thinking and apply it to their business?
Mainstream, when you say mainstream, define like
a big consumer company that has nothing to do with plastic or waste. How would they innovate to be able to take advantage of the kind of scale that you're talking about?
So do you know the term circular economy?
Yes.
Okay, not many people do.
Maybe explain the concept.
I didn't even know. I didn't know either. I'll explain it my way, the Issac Reshad way. So basically, circular economy. We live in a linear economy, which means you manufacture something, you take the waste and you just throw it out, right? Whatever waste is left over. In circular economy, you basically manufacture it. Okay, you take the waste, you recycle it, and then you upcycle it to a more durable product. It's more durable. It's going to last longer, right? And then you can recycle that again over and over. I'm giving the simplest definition of it. Circular economy is approximately $4 trillion, the market in Europe, approximately, and it's growing. If I don't want to make a mistake and mention the wrong names, but there's multi-billion-dollar corporations that now have like a department or an expert that focuses on circular economy. And they define it like, oh, let's stop this packaging, this single-use plastic packaging or whatever it is. So they're focusing more now. They're more aware of the plastic packaging, but that's the circular economy side.
Right.
That's how they're starting.
Sure. So what happens is a consumer will throw some trash in the bin. It'll come back to them as their house, as you explained it. That's the circular economy.
That's what it comes out. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and also bigger corporations, the very, very big ones, and this is all on. You can Google it. It's public knowledge. Like the big boys, they're donating. They're actually investing in funds that are investing in these solutions. But some people question that. They say, well, if the big corporations are investing, what does that mean?
Right.
We don't know yet. It's too early in the game.
Right.
I'm more confident. I'm trusting them because this is a really big problem.
Yes. A lot of people don't realize that the fossil fuel industry is actually the basis for the plastic industry. People think about gas, they think about oil, but they don't actually realize that plastic is made from fossil fuel. So I'm guessing there must be many, many years worth of discarded plastic out there to keep what you're doing going for a very long time.
I'm not going to mention a name because I would have their permission. First, I asked the scientists, I said, right now, if the world just stopped manufacturing plastic and producing plastic, stopped everything. She said, that's impossible. I said, but if they do that, how much plastic will be out there decades. Decades.
Right.
Because not only you have it all over the ocean, it's alongside the shores, and not a lot of countries are disclosing this because they're afraid, it's really bad.
Right. So just to get back to the financial side of what you do, you're obviously dealing with families who are wanting to invest in technology like this. Are you seeing a mind shift among people who are realizing that building social impact into their investments is a good investment?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Has that changed from a few years ago?
Oh, absolutely. And people are getting more clear on the measuring part. And the returns are, in my opinion, slightly higher than what they were. Slightly, which is great.
Right. So you can start looking at these new technologies and new businesses as the next big thing in terms of investment?
In my opinion, yes. I mean, where my families that I represent, I am pushing more towards that direction, and they love it. And that's sort of like a niche for me as well. So so they're like, this is what we want. We don't want your traditional real estate, but if it's going to be real estate, we want green friendly. We want sustainable.
Right.
The whole thing with smart cities and sustainable cities.
Right.
So because my product is not fully out yet in the mass market, they want to do right now sustainable building.
Right. So you deal with the Middle East. I'm not sure if you deal with China at all, but China gets a bad rap for a lot of pollutants out there, but they're also leaders in a lot of green technology.
Yes.
Why is that not being raised up and made a bigger deal of?
So last time I did business with China was approximately 15 years ago. My family was in the garment business and manufacturing. I have not looked at the technology in China. I'm not saying they're good or bad. I look more at the technology here in the US and Europe. In my opinion, I think Europe's doing an amazing job with the technology. And I'd say United States would be second. China, I haven't looked into it too much. Because my clients are specifically looking at European and American investments.
Right.
But I'm not saying China's not bad. I mean, I'm sure they have something, but we haven't looked into it yet.
Right. If you had to look at the future of business, what do you see?
The sustainable game, the impact investing game, everything's becoming sustainable. I mean, look at the whole world. Everything is.
Sure.
You wake up every morning, there's something new, everything becomes sustainable.
Right.
I think people care now, people are more aware now. I didn't know the plastic problem until 3 years ago.
Right.
It's killing
Now
people.
you're investing in it.
People are sick, people are becoming sick. All these unexplained diseases people have.
Right.
Where is it coming from? I'm not saying everything's from plastics, but there's a small percentage of it.
Sure. And sustainability is obviously top of mind with most companies these days.
Yes.
How do you suggest they translate their business plan into something that's sustainable? People firstly, maybe give your definition of what sustainability is. Because a lot of business people think, well, sustainability means turning a profit and staying in business, not letting employees go, still being in business in 5-10 years' time. What is the new metric of how you measure business success?
You're asking a very tough question, because I have my own everybody has their own definition, right? But look, sustainable to me is, basically, all right, if you look at the nonprofit side, building a community to support themselves, wherever country it is, so we don't have to go back and help them all the time. You want, for example, projects in Southeast Asia I was involved in, where we went out and we bought sewing machines for women to create, to manufacture uniforms for their country, for their contracts to their local police. I'm just giving you a simple example,
Sure.
right? So it was a nonprofit under, right? The other sustainable game is, I think, to me, sustainability is, I define it with just, I'm more into the whole waste game. So I'm speaking the waste language. I don't want to speak general. I look at waste, we have a major waste problem. And we got to create businesses that are self-sustaining, taking the waste, working together, and just turning it into a product and a resource.
Right.
So I can answer it that way.
Sure.
Yeah.
And governments used to be doing that kind of job. It used to be part of the infrastructure. Business seems to have taken over now.
Public,
is
private
business more effective these days than governments?
Public-private partnerships.
Right, because the government's got the scale and business has the...
They work together.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Public-private partnerships have increased, in the past 5-6 years, it's gone up. It's continuing to. Some countries still don't get the model, but they're adapting to it as we go.
Right. So governments are increasingly seeing the role of business as being a good thing.
Yes.
Not trying to meddle in what they have in place.
A positive thing, yeah.
Right.
They're listening, they're being more open, including the UN.
Right.
They're being more open and accepting.
Sure. Just in terms of leadership, what do you see as a good leader? What qualities define a good leader?
Good leader, people tell me you're successful, or when you become successful, we're behind you and all that. The way I define the leadership and success is, I tell them, look, I'm successful if you guys are successful with me. Okay, not because I'm being a nice guy, it's because if we're all successful, we move up faster. Also, we got to care about the environment. Okay, I don't go and do protests and all that. I'm not judging anybody that does.
You weren't protesting with Greta last week, were you?
I didn't, no, but I do respect her.
Right.
You know, I do respect her. She's young and that's great. But my whole thing is, guys, roll up your sleeves, go out there and invest in solutions. Because a lot of people say, well, I'm not going to invest money because I'm not going to get a return. I don't care. I'm not going to be alive in 20 years. Those are selfish people.
Right.
Just get involved in a business like I'm trying to do here, or I'm going to do, and I'm not going to give up. Build these type of companies. There's so much technology around. There's so much resources around. And people want to help you. Governments want to help you.
Right. It seems as if a lot of people's business plans have moved from a 5 to 10 year to a 100 year possibly. Some companies are looking 200 years ahead. We're not even going to be here for that. What kind of selflessness is needed in a leader these days that actually starts seeing so far ahead where they're not going to materially benefit now for themselves?
Visionaries. Do I call myself a visionary 100%? No. My partners are visionaries. My partners. You interviewed one of them. Well, he's a good colleague and friend of mine. You interviewed him yesterday. I met you through him.
Right.
So I learned from these guys. They learned from me. I learned from them. But they're visionaries. I surround myself by visionaries. They're my mentors. I go to them. They come to me.
How would you define a visionary?
Somebody that thinks that's selfless, does not think about just themselves and thinks about the future, thinks about everybody in this planet in the long term. Not saying, oh, I'm not going to be here in 20 years. What do I care? People say that.
Yeah.
But what about your children? What about your grandchildren? Silence. Yeah. Those to me are the visionaries. How can we, you said 200 years. Before, if you told me 200 years, I'd run the other way. Now I'm like, okay, let's talk.
Wow.
Because it's your generations that are going to run, right?
I spoke to a woman a few months ago who was pregnant, who acknowledged to me that she knew there was plastic in her womb inside her child.
She did?
She did. She knew it from scans and from blood tests. And it was really shocking to realize that you're actually acknowledging the fact that you're giving birth to a kid that's got plastic inside their body already. And I think that really gives you a generational perspective on how it's not just an old problem, but it's actually a problem going forward.
Yes.
In a very big and very real way.
To me, we don't know the diseases. There's people ask me, what kind of proof do you have it makes you sick? Or there's no written proof, but it's very obvious. I mean, think about it. Microplastics, we're drinking it. It's pretty scary if you think about it, right? So I don't drink soda, I drink a lot of water. But then when I start thinking about microplastics, I get nervous. Because not all of it goes through the filtration from the studies that we've done.
Yes.
You know?
Sure.
And also the fish. I eat seafood. I stopped the whole red meat craze. I'm eating more fish. Okay, I don't eat the farm raised, I eat the wild. And I'm like, wait a minute, it's wild, but how much plastic has it ingested? What about the other situation? You know, approximately 2/3, I think, of our the oxygen is from the ocean. Approximately. You know, you have plastic in there. It's not safe.
Sure. You know? So you're a long-term big thinker.
I'm a long-term big thinker, and I'm going to say what I mean. I rather make less money over many years than to make big money short-term.
Right.
You know, because I want to make an impact. I really want to make an impact. You know.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for talking to me today. It's been a pleasure talking with you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great.